Hello and welcome to Petrol Media. I'm your host, Terrence Anderson, and I wanted to discuss, is Akai leaving the software guys behind, desktop and PC users behind? Let's talk about it. So first, I don't think Akai is leaving us behind. I'm a desktop user. I have the 5000, the 1000 somewhere in the house, and I use the MPC Studio with the software MPC 2.15. And I really like the way the software functions for my needs, because primarily I use the 1000 and the 5000 to start my production usually. And that's just because that's the generation I came from, 2000 Excel and all those things. And then from there, I will take the data and sometimes go to the MPC2 software, or I'll just go straight to Logic, because usually I just go right to Logic if I have to work on something. However, lately I've been enjoying using the MPC2 software, mainly because I was starting to go down the road of deciding which hardware machine I actually want to buy. Now, you guys all know my stance on the whole 2.0, 3.0 thing. When it comes to hardware, there is really no difference in all of the different machines. If you look at the way Akai used to do things, every generation of machine was actually different, meaning the hardware functioned for the most part the same way, but the way you interacted with it was different. But with the stance, once they went to the software world with the Renaissance and everything that came after that, there became a synergy where everything functioned essentially the same. The only difference was how many more buttons would you like? And in standalone mode, that became the case. This was not a bad thing. This was actually a really good thing, because it made the ecosystem simpler to get into. You can get into the MPC1 and then transition to Live and transition to the MPC-X. Then later on, we had the keyboards, the Key 61 and the Key 37. This actually made it a very cohesive system. Now, going between the software and the hardware also became easy because of that. And that's why when I received a Studio 2 as a gift, I actually appreciated it, because it gave me an opportunity to check out the new hardware/software without having to go out and buy the new standalone units, and that lowered my overhead. So from Akai's standpoint, going back into the world of standalone units, making 3.0 dedicated for standalone users was actually a very smart move on their side, because they started there. We haven't been there for a long time. So do I feel like they left the desktop people behind? I don't think so. I think what's happening, and this is just my personal thought process, and I've talked about it in the MPC groups online, is that for them, if they had made 3.0 out the door available for the desktops, most of us would be like, why are we buying the hardware? And I actually think it's a smart move on their part to prioritize the hardware at this time and focus on making the hardware the best piece of gear they could possibly make. That's an important thing. If you make the desktop run 100% the same as the hardware, then that doesn't give me an incentive to go buy the hardware. Now, the arguments come down the road of like portability, which, yes, you can take the Live 2 with you anywhere. You could take the One Plus with you as long as you have a way to plug it in. At the same time, I can take my laptop in the Studio 2 and do the same thing. So all those different arguments are kind of like neither here nor there. I just think that from a standpoint of dealing with the technology itself, I think they really just wanted to prioritize giving the hardware people something they really, really want. The desktops are extremely powerful. I mean, your average laptop is about as powerful as mine. My laptop, I've mentioned it before, I have 32 gigs of RAM in there, but if you have 16 gigs of RAM in your machine, you already have more than enough. If you know anything about the architecture for Mac and Windows, they're gonna prioritize, if you have 16 gigs of RAM, you're gonna prioritize about 4 to 7 gigs, give or take, for the operating system and regular uses, which means you still have a lot of headroom for you to load stuff into RAM for a sampler. And then on top of that, you have the processors. The standalone units don't have very powerful processors, and when you compare them to a desktop or a laptop. I mean, my laptop's running with an i7 with 8 processor cores, and that's a lot of processing power. So my laptop is actually pretty powerful, pretty fast, and I love how it functions with the desktop. For me, not looking at the desktop when I work on the Studio 2 is actually a benefit. So the only reason I actually have it up and open is because there's certain things that I don't have access to right away on the Studio 2. So then I have to go to the desktop to actually function with it. But beyond that, I really don't use the desktop in that manner. I think the disconnect, because I had the same problem as many people who come from the hardware world and go into the desktop world, I started to look at this thing and get confused. Can't look at this thing. That you have to look at it from the same perspective of how did I do things when I was just a hardware user. And then once I started doing that, it became simple. As for those who say the desktop experience is different from the experience with the standalone, I don't really see it, because this in 2.0 or 2.15, if you run a X or a Live or anything else in 2.15, it's the same experience. The only difference is you don't have the touch screen for the XY capability, but that's such a minor thing that I don't really use. So personally, myself, I don't see how that's a pro or con for using desktop. I think for right now, the bigger thing is they're trying to support those of you who use the standalone units and give you the most powerful version of it. Because honestly, when they launched the new native instruments integration, I actually supported it. I actually talked about it on the channel, and I think it's a great thing for standalone users. However, a lot of those instruments I already have because I have a native instrument account, and I already have them in here, with the exception of the Play Series ones that are going to be specialized just for the standalone models, which eventually I'm sure they'll probably launch it as an option for us. So to summarize all of this, I don't think that Akai forgot about us. I think what they're doing right now is smart. It's just a business move. I mean, I went to school for business. I get it. Focus on one section first. Make sure everything is shored up and sorted out, because I'm pretty sure it's not that hard to port it over for the desktop. But if they put it all out at the same time for the desktop users as well as the hardware users, it becomes a conversation of why should I buy hardware? I mean, as it stands for myself, I'm literally looking at which hardware piece to buy in a few months, because I do like having standalone units. I, again, have the 5000, I have the 1000 upstairs. I'm still hunting down a 2000 XL because I don't know any better. And I'm looking at possibly picking up one of the standalone units. I haven't decided on which one yet. So at the end of the day, it's a very savvy business move on the part of Akai. So I can't fault them for that. As for us desktop users, my suggestion is be patient. Give them a chance to actually sort out whatever they're sorting out with the standalone units and move forward. I myself have found workarounds for everything. I own an MPK 249. This is connected to my machine via the Studio 2 and controls various features, and I've actually mapped all of the controls so I don't miss having those 16 controllers on the side of the MPCX, because I have 16 controls right here. So there's workarounds, and that's the beautiful thing. When you look at the history of Akai and the MPC world and music production as a whole, never mind old school, new school, literally production is about problem solving. You find something you want to do, you're gonna run into an issue, and you find a workaround for that issue. That's the thing we have to remember. Once you start thinking about it from that perspective, it's gonna get a lot easier for you, I promise. For now, my takeaway from this is be patient, be resourceful, focus on getting better at everything that you do, and showcase what you can do so we all can see it and enjoy it. If you like what I've been talking about, like, share, and subscribe. Join me next time for the next video. I wanted to get across my thoughts on the subject, and I think we're gonna have a great future with Akai, so let's give them a chance to do what they have to do on their end so we can enjoy it on the back end. And don't worry, I'm pretty sure it's coming, and we'll see what they do. Let's just give them a moment. Catch you guys next time.